Political Maneuvers. =RK=. Part 3. Senator Amidala's Suite. Republica 500. Coruscant. I can honestly say that spending my last evening on Coruscant here, before leaving for Corellia, wasn't something that I expected. Especially being amongst such pleasant company. The place was Padmé's relatively small dining room. As for the company, well, there was Anakin as one might expect, and Shark T. After the press conference, she had been once again assigned as my shadow. What amongst what I said could have prompted such a reaction among the Jedi, I wonder? I rhetorically asked myself. Shark T, who was sitting across the table from me, snorted. She spoke as if reading my thoughts. You all but called most Jedi incompetent, made many of us look like a bunch of crazy zealots, and insinuated that you would be replacing us with a bunch of bloodthirsty maniacs in charge of the clones. What's there to be nervous about? Obviously the time for small talk was over. A pity, I was enjoying the story Padmé was telling us about Anakin's antics on their flight from Coruscant towards Naboo during the Trade Federation crisis. Her words just highlighted one of the biggest problems I had with the Jedi. From my, and most objective people's perspective, what she said was true. The Jedi, at least most of them, were incompetent as far as being military officers goes. As for bloodthirsty replacements, that would be true only from the Jedi's perspective. For the most effective military commanders would probably be considered a bunch of murderous maniacs. To be fair, Master T. Windu made a great example for most of the points you raised, Anakin snorted. Further, Del Qatar is right. Most of us are unfit for being generals, he muttered quietly. It was obvious that Skywalker was remembering his and Obi-Wan's escapades on Ryloth. How so? Asked T. You are speaking from experience, she declared after studying him for a few moments. Yeah. What happened? She asked. I want to know that too. Padmé added her 2 cents, sending a pointed look at her husband and then to the living room where I had noticed a couch. And you, she pointed at me with her fork, I can definitely say that the way you got your version of the story out first was very good. For a politician. As one of the leaders of the army, you should know better than to play such games. It is the Senate's job to deal with the press and the politics of the situation. There isn't much of the Senate left, Padmé. Besides, if I'm to be honest, I wouldn't trust most of your colleagues with anything of importance. I turned my head towards Anakin. While she had grown up a lot in the short time I knew her, she could still be naive sometimes. You know, Dooku was right when he spoke with Kenobi on Geonosis. Skywalker gave me an empty look. I have no idea what you are talking about. Perhaps you know what I imply? I turned my attention towards Shark T, who shook her head in denial. Her hypnotizing eyes were looking at me with interest. He told Obi-Wan that the Senate and the Republic as a whole were under the influence of a Sith Lord. And he didn't mean me. So Dooku tried to gain Kenobi as an asset for the Sith by lying to him. It obviously failed. Obviously. However, you are mistaken about one point. Dooku told the truth, I declared, and watched with amusement the effects of the bomb I just dropped in their collective laps. It wouldn't be the last for the night either. Even if you are correct, I just can't take your word for that. Not without evidence, declared Padmé. To my pleasant surprise, the one who asked the most important question was none other than Shark T. It is a grave accusation. One I can't dismiss out of hand considering how the Senate has been behaving. Though most of those suspicious instances could be written off as simple greed and corruption. She fixed me with a stare. Why are you telling this to the 3 of us? Such suspicions would be better served if brought to either the Jedi Council or your friend Valentra. Hey. I am a senator. This is need-to-know information for me too, Padmé exclaimed. Yet, Master T raises a good point. Care to enlighten us? 3 pair of eyes converged on me. I leaned back into my chair. It was time to start laying the foundation of the future. You need allies. Shark T trailed off. I have my reasons to want you all on my side. I looked at Padmé. You are one of the youngest, yet most influential senators in the Republic. A woman of integrity, who stands by her ideals when the going gets tough. Which is something to admire, though sometimes the consequences of your stubbornness could be to the detriment of us all. You and Anakin are never going to let my stand against the Republic Army bill go, will you? Padmé grumbled. Not anytime soon, I muttered. To his credit, Anakin remained silent. The young man obviously didn't want to sleep on the couch. Again. Padme, you are a staunch advocate of democracy and freedom of choice. Something that will be missing from this galaxy if the Sith, or my hypothetical Sith backing them, win. Fair enough, she said. It was no secret that there was a conspicuous lack of democracy after the Separatists seized a world. Or within their own camp if the rumors we got from intelligence had any merit to them. You, my young friend, I pointed at Anakin, will do anything to protect those precious to you. Something that the Jedi did little to help you with in the past. Besides, to those that still believe in such nonsense as prophecies, you are the chosen one in addition to being a powerful Force adept. And a talented amateur as far as commanding troops goes. He gave me a stubborn look, but then shook his head. The reminder of what happened with his mother not too long ago was still painful. I could clearly sense his anguish at the reminder. So could Shakti, but she chose to remain silent until she knew more about the situation she suddenly found herself in. And what about me, O wise one? Shakti asked. You are one of the best that the Jedi have. An experienced leader, a virtuoso with a lightsaber. And most importantly, someone who no longer takes the Council's propaganda for holy scripture that must be followed at all costs. That she was quite pleasant to the eyes was something I didn't add aloud. It wasn't something she would appreciate right now. Though that thought made a concern resurface in my mind. Was I thinking with my dick as far as tea was concerned? Well, no matter. Right now was too late for second thoughts. I had made up my mind and it was high time to start recruiting some high-profile people to my side. Or shoot myself in the foot if I had misjudged those three. I have a vision for the future that I want to accomplish. Imagine a galaxy that is stable, a beacon of law and order. A place that no longer strains under the wasteful chaos of this war. I want a peaceful galaxy, one where you won't have to fear the ambitions of petty warlords. A place without rampant crime. A galaxy free of slavery, no matter if you are fortunate to live within the heart of the Republic or you are from a Force-forsaken world in the Outer Rim. I took a deep breath. That is my dream. And with your help, I might be able to pull it off. My little speech got Anakin's attention at least. It was enough to mention that I wanted to get rid of slavery for good and he was almost guaranteed to have my back. Besides, straightening up the galaxy was something that he would agree with. Oh, my. That's a lot to take in. You sure are ambitious, Delkatar. I can't help but wonder, while those are pretty words you say, do you really mean them? Asked Shakti. Words are cheap. I would like you all to judge me by my actions. Yet, your path is one of carnage, supplied Padme. You can't change the galaxy with only your ideals. More often than not it takes someone willing to dirty their hands. Do you think that the Hutts will stop their criminal enterprises, or rein in their slavers if you ask nicely or force some kind of economic sanctions upon them? No, Anakin growled. I know those beings, he hissed, remembering his life as a slave. There is only one language they understand. Unless you are willing and able to enforce your terms, nothing will change. For the longest time a big part of the Outer Rim has been a hellhole and yet, neither the Republic nor the Jedi have done a thing to clean up that mess. It is something that should have been dealt with centuries ago. Shakti shook her head in resignation. Anakin. You know that isn't the Jedi way. We are diplomats and peacekeepers. For all the good it did, he muttered. Oh, Arnie, Padme whispered, in a way one wouldn't speak to just a friend. Anakin looked at his wife, his funk forgotten. Something that didn't remain unnoticed by Shakti. She was glancing from Anakin to Padme. I gave the three of them a wan smile. It was time to drop the hammer. Anakin, I believe that you as well as many of the other Jedi are aware that I consider you a friend, right? I asked lightly. Skywalker tore his eyes from the stunning image that was his wife. It's truly amazing what some makeup could accomplish, and glanced at me. The change of topic had surprised him. By the way he shifted his posture, I could gather that he had considerably calmed himself. I think it's safe to say you are correct in that assessment. You aren't one to ask questions you know the answer to. Unless you want to make a point, Senator Amidala stated, while her husband was still regaining his cool. I think Padme got it, I said. The senator had paled a bit. She had a grim expression on her face. Padme, what is it? Skywalker asked. His tone was full with concern. I should have thought of that after today's interviews. Even earlier, though today would make it certain. She gave me a cross look. You said it plainly for everyone in the galaxy to hear that you are a Sith. So? Anakin shrugged. It was a public secret anyway. Besides, it's far from being the most memorable thing he said anyway. That's my point. Combined with the contents of your speech, that will bring even more scrutiny upon you. And upon your friends. She glared at me. Shark T glanced between the secretly married couple. She had been wondering why Anakin had been invited to this dinner in the first place, and I'm sure that she was disturbed by the way those two interacted, even if they tried to keep things professional. Especially if one of them is the chosen one of the Jedi Order, the Togruta said with a thoughtful frown on her face. An expression which made her look very cute. I simply beamed at her. Say what you will about Skywalker, but he could be fast on the uptake when he wanted. He deflated and looked dejectedly at his half-eaten food. It won't be long now. Even without practically announcing it to a Jedi Master. He pointed an accusing finger at my chest. Guilty as charged, Anakin. However, there is a method to my madness. I leaned towards him and mock whispered, just loud enough for the women to hear. It's a test. Those two are in a relationship. Shark T grumbled. She glared at each one of us in turn, before taking a deep pull from the cup of Naboo wine in front of her. In hindsight it should have been obvious. How long? A few weeks? Longer? The husband and wife looked at each other, conversing with but a glance. We finally admitted our feelings on Geonosis, Anakin said. And we married soon afterwards, when Arnie escorted me back to Naboo after the battle was resolved. Married? Shark T spluttered. Ki Adi Mundi, I interjected, earning myself a withering glare. Don't give me that, Del-Qatar. You know very well that he is a special case. His species is close to extinction. So? Do you really believe that there are no feelings involved between him, his wives and kids? I asked. He is a Jedi Master. He can control his heart? I interrupted her. Trust me about this, Master T. It doesn't work like that. I know. She was about to argue further, but then abruptly clamped her mouth shut. She gave me a pained look and lowered her head. What you showed me. Your wife. She fell for and married a Sith during the war, yet she remained a Jedi up until the bitter end. Yes. She never fell to the dark side, despite reveling in her feelings. Ashara let her emotions run free and she was stronger for it, I spoke wistfully, remembering times long past. You were married? Skywalker asked. What happened to her? Padme was fast to add her own question. I gave them an empty stare. She was murdered. By the Jedi of my own era. Two simultaneous gasps echoed in the suddenly cold dining room. Shark T winced when I reminded her of my past again. She was looking at her lap, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. Political maneuvers. =RK=. Part 4. Padme's apartment. 500 Republica. Coruscant. Del-Qatar's latest revelation stopped the conversation cold. While both Anakin and Senator Amidala were struggling with the implications of Vale's past, Shark T was trying to figure out what he was aiming for. Unless she was very much mistaken, there was far more to his goals than what he had revealed. Which was a given. After all, Vale hadn't told them anything besides a very general outline for the future he wanted. Then it clicked. The Jedi Order. What was its place, the Jedi's place in the galaxy Del-Qatar wanted to shape? Then again, if Del-Qatar wanted them discredited, or even worse, Windu had given him the perfect opportunity, during the first attack on the temple. She looked up, unspoken questions shining in her eyes. Her gaze was met by the Sith's amused expression. What about the Jedi? What about them? He repeated her question. The Jedi will make their own choices and reap the consequences, whatever they may be. All I've done is try to steer your counsel away from the path that your kind took in my past. == Meanwhile, Anakin was staring at his wife, while his heart was gripped by fear's cold embrace. It wasn't that long ago that he lost his mother. Shmi died of her wounds in his arms. Because he had been too late. Because the Jedi were unsympathetic to his plight. And finally, because despite all that power at his fingertips, he had been powerless to save his mother. He'd been unable to heal her, which was another failing of the Jedi. The only thing available to learn had been the healing trance, something that worked only on oneself. In contrast, He was sitting next to living proof that even a Krithing Sith could heal better than what was officially available to the Order. What was sealed within the temple's archive out of fear, the knowledge that could have saved his mother, probably gathered dust somewhere in the temple, all but forgotten. That angered Anakin, yet it was far from all that burdened him. Part of him feared the Order's reaction once his marriage became public knowledge. Would they expel him? Demand that he dissolve his marriage? At any rate, it would be a scandal, and a public one at that. While he didn't really care what the effect would be on him, he was exposed to enough politicking to know that Padmé's enemies would try to use their secret marriage against her. All those thoughts ran through Skywalker's head, while he struggled with the bomb that Vael dropped in their laps. Part of him wanted to deny it. To believe that the Jedi, no matter from which era, would do such a thing. Yet, the darker part of his personality, which was born from his childhood in slavery, knew better. He hadn't been innocent for as long as he could remember, knowing very well the evil men did. That cynical part of Anakin Skywalker could very well see it. A raid to either capture Vael's wife to rescue her from the corrupting influence of the Sith. An attack meant to get Vael himself, which found his wife instead. An attempt to kidnap her in order to blackmail an enemy leader. It could have been any one of these scenarios gone wrong, even before Del-Qatar told them exactly what had happened. About Ashara possessing the fabled battle meditation. So Anakin could almost understand why the Jedi of that time had gone after Ashara. Though in the end it didn't really matter. Anakin knew that if the roles were reversed, if the Sith somehow managed to get Padmé, which the Krithing bastards seemed keen on doing, he would go to the end of the galaxy and beyond to make them pay. And if he somehow traveled to a far future in which the Sith or a successor organization still existed, they would be his enemies too. He would have thought that would be even truer for a Sith. Yet, instead of a vengeance-driven monster, he was dining with a reasonable man, who not only wanted to finally bring order to a galaxy gone mad, but to crush Krithing slavery once and for all. So he was torn and confused. What Vael apparently wanted, was the same thing Skywalker's heart desired, beyond seeing his angel safe and happy. Yet he couldn't help but wonder what the catch was. =RK=, Padmé, while married to a Jedi and friends with a few others, didn't really grasp the nuances of the Force. Especially the differences between the light and dark sides, beyond one being the evil one. That was through no failing of her own, considering the narrow views and understanding possessed by the Jedi of the era. So while she considered the death of Vael's wife a tragedy, she missed most of the implications, both about Del-Qatar and the Jedi who ordered and took part in the raid. Nevertheless, by extrapolating what she knew of the Order of her time, she could see that act as being out of character. Or one born out of desperation. Just as she viewed Windu's actions. That's how Padmé Amidala started wondering how far some Jedi would go while Del-Qatar's star continued to rise and he accumulated more and more power. A most disturbing thought as far as all its implications went. Both about the Jedi's possible excesses and about what Vael would one day decide to do with his power. After all, she was opposed to even Palpatine, an old and dear friend gaining as much power as he already had, and Vael would come to match him if nothing drastically changed in the near future. While what Del-Qatar said he wanted sounded great for the galaxy as a whole, Padmé simply couldn't trust him. Not with this. Not with that much power. If she had to be honest with herself, she probably couldn't condone anyone gaining so much power. Yet, opposing his agenda, while she wasn't really sure what it truly was, wouldn't be the prudent thing to do. She sighed. The Republic was in shambles, and barring a miracle, the situation would grow a lot worse before it started improving. The last thing the Republic needed was further internal divisions in the face of the Sith. Besides, Padmé didn't have a leg to stand on against Vael. Not when what he said he wanted would be embraced by most if not all Republic citizens. She had few appealing choices. In the end, Padmé decided to follow what she knew Anakin would go for. She would stand with Vael for now. To see what his vision for the future really was. And to be ready if he was indeed the power-hungry tyrant his detractors tried to portray him as. At least that way she might be able to keep Arnie on the straight and narrow path. =RK=. So, it comes to this, Shark T thought. Suddenly she was in position to fulfill her mission from the Council. She could easily become part of Del-Qatar's inner circle and learn his plans. So the Jedi could be ready if he was anything but what he posed as. After all, their official position as far as this Sith was concerned, was trust but verify. from multiple credible sources. It was a simple thing really. An agreement, one that was non-binding or anything, at least for now. Yet, the Togruta couldn't help but feel trapped. Somehow T found herself in a position where no matter what she would choose, she would betray someone's trust. That very thought caught her off guard. Since when did Vale's trust mean anything at all to her? I would like to see this future of yours unfold. Padme broke the silence to everyone's surprise. She smiled frosty. As long as securing this galaxy from the insanity of this war is your goal. That much I can guarantee. I don't want this galaxy torn asunder by conflict or to crown myself emperor or other such nonsense. Shark T was stunned. As he spoke, Delcatar dropped his shields for an instant. For a moment, she could clearly feel Vale through the Force. He was telling the truth. Not even a hint of deception. Then the barriers slammed back in place, and Delcatar was once again a whirlpool of light and dark energies. Shark T briefly considered the possibility that he was trying to manipulate them, but she discarded it. The Force didn't lie. Vale was serious about bringing order and stability to the galaxy without, unlike any Sith she had heard before him, wanting to be the one in charge of everything. Delcatar looked her in the eyes and smiled. I know that despite everything that happened in the short time I've been here, I've yet to earn your trust. So I won't ask you to choose between following my path or the Council. I'm aware that they want you to report on my actions, and that's fine with me. I hope that by telling them the truth, you would help convince the more traditional-minded Jedi that I'm not a monster fit to be tied. I see. Shark T trailed off. That was certainly not what she had expected. She was glad that her loyalties wouldn't be tested any further that day. Well, we'll see how your actions speak for themselves. Besides, you'll need someone to keep you out of too much trouble. She smirked at Vale and gave him a toothy grin. When she turned her head towards Skywalker, the young Jedi shrugged. What? He exclaimed, noticing that everyone was looking at him. You know my opinion on slavery. Neither the Republic nor the Jedi did a criffing thing to clean up the Outer Rim. If Delcatar wants to make a difference, I'm behind him 100%. As for the catch, we'll wait and see. Skywalker thought. =RK=. Well, that's a much better reception than I feared. I gave them a genuine smile. Oh, I was well aware that I had only their tentative support for now, and at least Padme was likely to go along only to see if in the long run, I was either an asset or threat to her precious Republic. Needless to say, I was all right with it. Those were just the first steps to binding them to my side. After all, if I wanted them as reliable long-term allies, it would take some time and a lot of effort to convince them that my plans were not only necessary, but something that they should support of their free will. What's your plan? Because what you stated were the end goals. Padme asked. Why, it is simple and obvious. We reform the Republic, I declared. That's certainly a bold statement. Padme gave me a wary look. Oh, I'm aware of that. It will be painful and rocky process, but stunts like the invasion of Naboo and nothing being done about it. Such things can't be allowed to happen ever again. That's a low blow, Vale. Padme glared at me. That makes it no less true. We need to eradicate the corruption crippling the Senate, and that's something in which you would be invaluable, I flattered her. He's kind of correct, Padme. If this war is to end, we need to solve the problems that caused the creation of the Separatists. A lot of their grievances were genuine. Shark T said. It was pleasant to see that she had her head out of the sand and knew that the Republic as it was one monumental train wreck in progress. Or at least she was starting to suspect it. So, how would we theoretically go about fighting the corruption on the higher levels of the Republic's government? I asked the senator. Padme frowned for a time, then she started speaking. == Later that night. Primary Republic R&D Complex. Coruscant. A few hours after the dinner was concluded, successfully at least in my opinion, I went to check up on a pair of projects, which would be combat-tested during the coming assault on Geonosis. It took me a lot of time to pass through all the now mandatory security checks in order to enter the complex, but I finally reached one of the dark rooms, from where I could access the data. Login, Vale, Delcatar, codename, Rogue Knight. Password. Day's codeword, Purple Midnight. Scanning. Voice print confirmed. Retinal scan confirmed. Biometric scan confirmed. DNA scan confirmed. Deep scan concluded. No foreign objects detected. Access granted. General. Voice command input active. Display status of Project Helldiver, I ordered. Accessing data banks. Searching. Data found. Warning. All files pertaining Project Helldiver are classified under code word Crimson Sonata. Ident Bloody Harvest. Code word accepted. Displaying files. Project Helldiver. Status, Phase 1 ready for combat trials. Phase 2 on standby pending High Command approval and combat data from Phase 1. How many units will be ready for Geonosis? Phase 1 prototypes approved for limited production run. 1000 ±5% completed units expected in allotted time period. Splendid. Approval for preliminary funding of Phase 2 is granted. Log off Project Helldiver. Access Project's Ascension and Rebirth. Accessing data. Warning: Project Ascension is protected under code word Black Dawn. Warning: Project Rebirth is protected under code word Black Sunrise. Ident Shadow Contingency. Ident Last Resort. Code words accepted. Displaying files. Project Ascension. Status, Phase 2 complete. Phase 3 is ready for implementation. Selecting volunteers is currently in progress. Estimated time to completion, 2 galactic weeks. Project Rebirth, Phase 1 is in progress. Analysis of gene sequences 30% complete. Research of genetic modification procedures in progress. Estimated time to completion, NA. Raise priority on Project Ascension. I want the procedures to begin within the week. Log off Project's Ascension and Rebirth. Access Project Dragon. Accessing data. Warning: Project Dragon is protected under code word Crimson Tide. Ident Whirlwind. Code word accepted. Accessing data. Project Dragon, status, Phase 1, preliminary design complete. Phase 2, on standby pending completion of projects Phalanx and Hermes. Good enough. Log off Project Dragon. It's time to catch some shut-eye. Logging you off. Query unclear. Please repeat request. Operation Anvil. RK equals. Interlude. GR, second Geonosis? Yes, that name brings back some memories. It was a trap. Just like Ryloth, at least that was the September's plan. Even before the Skywalker affair, the Sis had placed bait we couldn't refuse on that world. A massive factory complex to produce an experimental class of war droids was nearing completion there. For our enemies, it was a way to leverage one of their strengths, the mass production of troops. Once online, that single site could shift the balance of power even further in the Sis' favor. Further, in the months since the war began, the Separatists fortified the whole world to such a degree that any attack would bleed us dry. Defense belts that incorporated kilometers-thick trench lines, thousands of heavily armored and sometimes shielded bunkers, extensive minefields, whole mountains turned into veritable fortresses, not to mention strong theater shields over all critical locations. All that and more, was manned by 3 whole army groups in addition to the natives' forces. The conservative estimate was that at least 2 million plus droids waited for us down there. That is, if the Navy could actually fight its way through the Sis space forces and get us into that meat grinder. TL, while a lot was said and written about the Geonosis campaign, I would like to know about something that was missed by the spotlight during the war. Many people saw attacking Geonosis as a fool's errand. Something that the Republic armed forces simply couldn't pull off at the time, and as you said yourself, the place was set up as a trap. Do you know how the powers that be reached the decision to attack, General Rex? How the Skywalker affair affected that decision, if at all? GR. How Vale and Valentra convinced the Chancellor to greenlight the operation, you mean? Yes, Geonosis was a trap, one that even in the best-case scenario would cost us too much in men and equipment. Though let me say something else first. What happened with the Skywalkers had no bearing on the decision to attack. The plans and necessary forces were already in place before that debacle. If anything, it just moved the timetable up a bit. TL, so Operation Anvil would have gone down anyway. GR, yes. The reason is simple. Where most people saw a lethal enemy stronghold, one that would prove too costly to take, General Vale saw an opportunity. Every enemy advantage I spoke about, well, he saw that too. However, he had a different point of view. Those massive enemy forces. 3 whole army groups, conveniently gathered in one place to be destroyed. Most of those heavily defended places all around Geonosis? Hey. Excerpt from interview given by General Rex. =RK equals. Part 1. Temporary Chancellor's Office. Location classified. Coruscant. Absolutely not. It's too dangerous, Skywalker snapped. Palpatine smiled at the people in his office in a grandfatherly way. I agree with Anakin, my Jedi friends. Risking a senator's life in such a way. He trailed off, sadly shaking his head. At the same time, behind his mental shields and gentle mask, Sidious was almost cackling with glee. He had some problems that might just solve themselves with a bit of improvisation. As a bonus, he could create a permanent rift between Anakin and the Jedi. Perhaps between the boy and Vail as well. All the while, removing someone who had been a long-time thorn in his side. The most amusing part was, that all he had to do was let his friends be themselves. That's not for any of you to decide, Padme snapped at them both. Just as expected. Senator Amidala. Padme. I've been your friend for many years. Please trust me in this. The stunt proposed by the Jedi Council, while having good intentions at its core, is less than wise. Granted, the negotiations on Cato Neimoidia are important. If there is any chance to prevent the further use of biological weapons in this war, it is worth it. Even the intelligence agencies agree. After the outcry, the Separatists' Council want to stop this madness from repeating itself. That doesn't mean that you should be going, Senator. Anakin pleaded. Sidious almost sneered at Skywalker's display of weakness. That woman was holding back his potential next apprentice, and Sidious would relish disposing of her when her demise would have the greatest impact. Which, if everything went well, would be soon. Skywalker. Don't give me this. Not after everything that happened on Naboo and even here on Coruscant. Besides, if Clovis used to support the Separatists, we need to know. If he still has contacts there, it could prove invaluable. That was the second reason she would want to go. Thanks to her misguided principles, Palpatine was convinced that Amidala would try to bring her old friend back to the side of the Republic. Such a naive girl. After the bioweapons attack, Clovis' support for the Sis was a death sentence if it went public, which with little blackmail and manipulation made sure that the man would serve one last purpose. After all, Palpatine couldn't allow one of his pawns to walk away when he had a change of heart. Unless I place you under house arrest, you would be going, aren't you? Palpatine spoke, letting a tinge of resignation enter his voice. Padme fixed him with her piercing gaze. Fine. At least take some precautions. He seemingly capitulated. Chancellor, Skywalker exclaimed. What? You should know this young lady well enough by now, my friend. When she sets her mind on something, there is no stopping her. Men. Padme grumbled. =RK equals. Alpha Site. GAR Special Operations Command CNC. Location classified. Coruscant. No rest for us, eh? Fixer mumbled. Boss. That can't be right. We aren't babysitters. Sev whined. I'm not amused either, brothers. Nevertheless, our orders stand. We are to make a covert insertion at Cato Neimoidia, and provide overwatch on one particular senator from the delegation which is there to sign a treaty banning the further use of biological agents for the duration of the war. Who's the lucky guy? Scorch asked. Gal. Senator Amidala. Fixer whistled. That's one tough girl. Oh, great. The danger magnet. Sev moaned. She's always on the news after getting in some kind of scrap. How are we supposed to keep her out of trouble? We aren't. Delta Squad and as yet unnamed assets will be there in case everything gets criffed beyond any hope, in General Vale's words. In such a case we are to grab her and get the hell out at any cost. Those orders are straight from the General. Is she his girlfriend or something? Scorch asked. It doesn't matter. We have our orders. Now finish checking your gear. We are heading for the shooting range in 5. Boss ordered. Yes, sir. 3 voices snapped in unison. =RK equals. Emerald Light Restaurant. Aton Tower. Corellia. General Vale, it's my honor to introduce you to Dictat Shyla Maricope. Beliblis declared with a flourish. I gave a respectful bow to the leader of Corellia's people. Governor General Maricope, it is pleasure to meet you. I've heard a lot of good things about you from this reprobate. I smiled and nodded towards Iblis, who chuckled in turn. The diktat answered with a well-practiced smile of her own, continuing the little performance for the media we were all performing. It was the way the game was played, and we all had to walk through the motions, to reassure the populace that all was as well as could be expected and we all were a bunch of good friends. Which meant that we spent about 20 minutes making small talk, mingling with Corellia's dignitaries and making the newsies' day, all while the stern-faced men and women from Corsica who were responsible for the gala's protection had to wonder who, if any, of the guests, restaurant's personnel or mingling reporters might be enemy spies or assassins. While the locals were some of the better security forces in the galaxy, if I actually needed protection, with my luck, what were the odds of that? The role of my bodyguard would fall to the gleaming black droid which was spending the evening behind me. Yeah. I had brought an assassin droid among Corellia's elite and none was the wiser. Sue me. To be honest, right then and there I was tempted to let HK go on a little killing spree. We, and by that I mean, the diktat, Iblis and me, were surrounded by a bunch of Corellian corporate sharks, who were bombarding us with hints how their respective megacorps could prove invaluable assistance to the Republic in her hour of need. With a pair of clowns actually dropping none too subtle hints that if any lucrative contracts went their way I might find myself considerably richer. If the imbeciles weren't so blunt and making such an offer in public, I might have considered it. If they could actually prove useful for my army and navy, then that would be great. Besides, I could always use more funds for my Black Ops budget. That's why I made a mental note to meet later with the corporation representatives who appeared to know what they were doing. I hear you ran into some kind of trouble at the spaceport, General? The diktat inquired, after we managed to exfiltrate ourselves from the corporate flunkies' clutches. All things considered, it was a fortunate accident, I admit, I chuckled. A little rascal trying to pickpocket you? How's that fortunate, Delcatar? Graham asked. Well, you see. RK equals. Flashback. Earlier that day. Lakriska Spaceport. Corellia. I've arrived on Corellia a few hours before the rest of my party, something that pissed off Commodore Palian and my security detail. However, that wasn't particularly big concern right now. I was reasonably sure that I could finish what I came to do and be back by the time my official visit started. Let's go, HK, I said. The pitch-black droid which accompanied me turned his head towards me and nodded once. While he could be mistaken for an archaic-looking protocol droid, an actually competent counterpart of C-3PO, my oldest surviving friend was anything but. He was a lethal machine created by the best Empire engineers, and then, once I stumbled upon him below the Jedi Temple, upgraded with what passed for cutting-edge technology in this day and age. It's been a long time, Master. Do you think there's anything left? HK asked. There is a monument for those fallen in the war near the site of our last battle here. It will have to do. I still can't believe that we lost that war. HK whined, his head dropping down. We really didn't. Not exactly. By the time the Empire collapsed into civil war, the old Republic had been all but defeated. So they got lucky. I finished shuttling down and securing the shuttle before heading back outside, followed by the quiet assassin droid. Setting my feet back on Corellian soil was strange. The last time I was here, during the war, I was leading my forces into capturing this world. Successfully at that. That particular information wasn't something I wanted spread far and wide. It would create some political troubles I didn't need. The spaceport itself was what I was expecting. A busy place making even the most heavily used airport on Earth look like a calm lake in comparison. The place was packed with people, and while it had heavy Corsica presence, I could move virtually unnoticed. Just another traveler minding his own business and his droid. No sire, nothing to see here. My outfit, which was a plain grey cloak, and with its hood hiding my face, probably helped in that regard. Everything was going so well, I believed for a moment that I just might be able to reach the memorial site of those fallen during the war without incident. Silly me. What happened was certainly unexpected. As one could guess, no one was dumb enough to try it ever since I became a Sith, while before that I had nothing to be stolen from me. So when a kid, no older than 12, accidentally bumped into me and deftly tried to swipe the contents of my pockets, I was one very surprised Force adept. My first reaction was to grab his shoulder before the little reprobate could try getting away, and then to slap him upon the head for being this foolish. Before I could do anything but catch him, the boy looked up, giving me fierce glare. "The Force really works in mysterious ways, youngling," I laughed. The kid's features were unmistakable, especially when not too long ago I had met Captain Jolie Solo in person. "Don't even think about it," I ordered, and the kid flinched, but remained still. I was sure that the little menace was contemplating kicking me in the shins and running away. "I'll make an educated guess. Your name is Han." The way his eyes widened was all the answer I needed. "What seems to be the problem, sir?" A Corsac officer with sergeant's stripes walked towards us and asked. "This one tried to pickpocket me. Quite deftly too." "Ah, another one of those. Well, take care of the problem, sir." "That won't be necessary, officer. I'll handle it," I said, reinforcing my voice with the force. "That won't be necessary. You'll handle it," he repeated like a broken recorder, shook his head and walked away. Han's eyes narrowed at me and he suddenly went limp in my hand. "You are a Jedi, right?" he moaned. "Stupid, stupid, stupid." He started chanting. "The only fool here is whoever pushed you to this stunt. Your place is at school and you'll be going there soon enough." "What?" Han exclaimed, with a horrified expression on his face. As if I just declared that I was going to kill him or something. "Kids." Flashback end. =RK=. Emerald Light Restaurant. Eton Tower. "Corellia, what do you intend to do with the kid?" asked a new voice. It belonged to someone quite powerful in the Force. A local Jedi who had been lurking around the restaurant and remained far away from me until now. "Reunite him with his uncle, once Jolie arrives here, and make arrangements that he goes back to school." "So you are one of the infamous Green Jedi? I haven't yet the honor of meeting one of your kind." "It's a pleasure, my lady." I smiled at the woman. She was looking great in her form-fitting green robes, which were actually designed by someone who knew what he was doing, in contrast to what most of the Jedi I knew wore. Her short black hair was tastefully framing her face, giving the illusion of a halo of all things. Further, from what I could sense, she wasn't attempting to suppress her emotions. Oh, she was shielding her mind and feelings as well as she could, but it was obvious. Yet, she wasn't letting her emotions to control her, just the opposite. She was in complete control of them, at least for now. Just moments after actually meeting one of the local Jedi, and paying attention to her, they had got my attention. A Jedi who might be actually competent. "I'm afraid I'm at disadvantage, my lady. General Del-Qatar Vale at your services." Jedi Knight Skara Halcyon. Her voice was calm, betraying nothing of what she felt. Her soft brown eyes were fixed on my face, studying me in return. My eyes widened at that. I had to deal with a few people bearing that name in the past, during the war. Needless to say, they were major pains in my ass. Let's hope she won't be the same. "It's a pleasure, Knight Halcyon. Pray tell, would it be possible for me to visit the Green Temple during this trip?" I asked, showing none of the eagerness I felt at the prospect. If she was anything to judge her fellows by, they were people I wanted to meet. "It's not up to me," Skara shrugged. "I will rely your wish to the Jedi Masters and we'll see." "Fair enough," I beamed. It was better than what I had any right to expect. "I believe that Del-Qatar meeting our own Jedi would be a splendid idea," the dictator exclaimed. "On that note, now that Corellia is officially in the war, would you assist us?" "That much I can confirm, yes," Halcyon said. "However, most of us aren't trained as leaders of troops. We would do better leading small strike teams or acting as advisors and diplomats." My smile widened at that. The Green Jedi were also well aware of their capabilities and weakness. That immediately made me even more interested in them, while I raised the potential threat level they represented. =RK=. Senator Lot DoD Residence. Cato Nemodia. In the biggest ballroom in DoD's residence, 5 Republic representatives mingled with some of their cis counterparts. Even in those perilous times, diplomacy had its own pace and rules. The grand gala the politicians were attending was something that was more or less inevitable. They had to show to the media and the masses that they could actually act civilized towards each other at the party. The host, Senator DoD, was staying near one of the walls, from where he could see all of his Republic guests. Lot's eyes were fixed on one particular woman, who was wearing a stunning white gown. Neither the way he looked at her or his carefully blank expression betrayed his true feelings. He respected and loathed Amidala in equal measures. The way she had turned the tables during that ill-thought invasion of Naboo had consequences with which he had to deal with up until the start of the war. On the other hand, it was rare to meet political opponents who not only had principles but stood by them, come fire or high tide. He almost regretted what was about to happen. Almost. Meanwhile, Padme was dancing with Rush Clovis, laughing dutifully at one of his jokes. Under different circumstances she might have even enjoyed herself, but knowing that the man in whose arms she currently was had supported the monsters who poisoned Naboo was making her sick. Yet, for the sake of their old friendship, she was willing to give him a chance to make it right. Still, in order to do that she needed to talk with him face to face, without unfriendly ears around. Padme believed that she had recreated their old friendship to a good enough degree for a frank conversation to work. And if not, well, it wasn't like Rush was dumb enough to try anything during such a high-level meeting. At the same time, Anakin was seething inside. He was sealed within a clone trooper armor, pretending to be one of the honor guard present for the negotiations. That criffing Hutt spawn was laying his hands on his angel. All he could do was grit his teeth and hope that the bastard would give him an excuse, any excuse to go after him. That and to blame the Jedi Council for placing his wife in such a position. She shouldn't be on Neimoidia of all places. Anakin had a very bad feeling about this stunt they were forced to participate in. =RK=. Commercial building near Senator DOD's residence. Cato Neimoidia. Boss, Spectre Actual, we have a problem. At least a platoon of commando droids is moving on the floor above the ballroom, Sev said in his comm. Copy that. We are ready to provide assistance. If Boss felt any apprehension, his voice didn't show it. Affirmative. Our hideout is ready and my men are in position. Just give the word and we will deploy. Do you have eyes on the Senator? Boss asked. Just a moment. She is in the far eastern corner of the ballroom. Griff. Enemies confirmed. Deploy, 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 Sev shouted. By the time he acquired his first target and pressed the trigger, all hell was already breaking loose within DOD's residence.